The Watchers of Willow Park. In the quaint, picturesque town of Willow Creek, there was a small park known for its serenity and beauty. Willow Park, as it was called, was a beloved spot for picnics, afternoon strolls, and community gatherings. It was also home to a series of statues, each depicting a different figure from local folklore. The statues were intricately carved, their lifelike features capturing the essence of the characters they portrayed. However, there was one statue that always seemed to draw more attention than the others. It stood at the center of the park, depicting a hooded figure known as the Watcher. According to local legend, the Watcher was a guardian spirit who protected the town from evil. The statue was said to be as old as the town itself, carved by an unknown artist with incredible skill and detail. One summer, a young artist named Claire moved to Willow Creek. She had heard of the park and its famous statues and was eager to see them for herself. Claire was fascinated by sculpture and hoped to find inspiration for her own work in the town's rich history and folklore. One sunny afternoon, Claire visited Willow Park. She admired the statues, each one more impressive than the last, until she reached the Watcher. There was something about the hooded figure that captivated her. She spent hours sketching it, trying to capture its eerie presence on paper. As she worked, she couldn't shake the feeling that the statue's empty eyes were watching her every move. Claire decided to ask the locals about the Watcher. Most people were happy to share the legend, but there were some who seemed uncomfortable discussing it. An elderly woman named Mrs. Thompson, who had lived in Willow Creek her entire life, gave Claire a warning. "The Watcher isn't just a statue," Mrs. Thompson said, her voice trembling. "It's a sentinel. It sees everything, and it doesn't like to be disturbed." Undeterred, Claire continued to visit the park, spending more and more time with the Watcher. She began to notice subtle changes in the statue's appearance. Its eyes seemed to follow her, and its stance appeared more menacing. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, but the feeling of being watched grew stronger each day. One evening, as the sun set and the park emptied, Claire stayed behind to finish a sketch. The air grew cold, and a heavy silence settled over the park. She looked up at the Watcher and felt a chill run down her spine. The statue's eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, and she could have sworn she saw it move. Panicking, Claire gathered her things and hurried home. That night, she had vivid nightmares of the statue coming to life, its cold stone hands reaching out to her. She woke up in a cold sweat, the sensation of being watched still lingering. Determined to prove that her fears were irrational, Claire returned to the park the next day. She brought a friend, Mark, hoping that another set of eyes would dispel her paranoia. As they approached the Watcher, Claire explained what she had experienced. Mark laughed it off. "It's just a statue, Claire. You're letting your imagination get the best of you." But as the sun set and the park grew darker, Mark began to feel uneasy. The statue's presence was overwhelming, and the feeling of being watched became unbearable. They decided to leave, but as they turned their backs on the Watcher, they heard a grinding sound, like stone scraping against stone. They spun around, and to their horror, the Watcher had changed positions. Its hooded head was now tilted downward, its eyes fixed on them. The statue's stone mouth twisted into a sinister smile. Terrified, they ran from the park, vowing never to return. Claire couldn't shake the feeling that the Watcher was still watching her, even from afar. That night, she barricaded herself in her apartment, but sleep eluded her. The nightmares returned, more vivid and terrifying than before. The following morning, Mark was found dead in his home, his body frozen in a pose of sheer terror. Claire knew it was no coincidence. The Watcher had claimed him, and she was next. Desperate for answers, Claire visited the town's library, digging through old records and newspaper clippings. She discovered that the Watcher had been created by a cult that once worshipped an ancient, malevolent deity. The statue was a vessel, a conduit for the deity's power, and those who spent too much time near it fell under its curse. Determined to break the curse, Claire sought the help of a local historian who specialized in the occult. Together, they devised a plan to destroy the Watcher and end its reign of terror. Armed with sledgehammers and holy water, they ventured into the park under the cover of night. As they approached the statue, a sense of dread washed over them. The Watcher seemed to pulse with dark energy, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. They hesitated, but Claire steeled herself and swung the sledgehammer with all her might. The statue cracked, and an unearthly wail filled the air. The ground trembled, and the shadows in the park seemed to come alive, writhing and twisting around them. Claire and the historian continued their assault, striking the statue again and again until it shattered into pieces. The moment the statue was destroyed, the oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the park returned to its peaceful state. The curse was broken, and the Watcher's hold over the town was finally ended. Claire left Willow Creek, hoping to leave the horrors of the past behind her. But no matter where she went, she could never forget the feeling of those stone eyes watching her, and the sinister smile that haunted her nightmares. The ruins of the Watcher remained in Willow Park, a stark reminder of the dark forces that once held sway over the town. And though the curse was broken, the legend lived on, warning future generations of the sinister statues and the dark powers they could contain.